Welcome to the podcast. Today, I am continuing my series of shows on Tomorrow's publications. Today, I have the editor of Cryptology, Peter Normanton. Peter, you live in England. What's your origin story and what got you into comic books to be a lifelong fan?
Yeah, we have our own comics over here in England. So I grew up on things like TV 21, Sparking, Beano, and Dandy. American comics was given to me by older neighbours as I was growing up. During the late 1970s, we got some good comic shops coming in. And by the 1980s, we had the big ones. We had Odyssey 7 in Manchester, which was my go-to. There was another place called Book Chain, which I could get old comics from. During the late 70s, 80s, it was a great collection of comics over here. We did have access to the American stuff in the end.
So, how old were you when you started reading comic books? Without
Maybe
giving
about,
your age.
no, I don't know. I'm not a youngster anymore. I'd have been about 4 or 5 years old. I had a thing for TV. I liked the Captain Scarlet stuff and Thunderbirds. And so TV 21 had all of these stories in. Beautiful artwork. So I had a good start in life. I could draw when I was a kid. I can't draw so well now, but when I was a kid, I could get by. So I could understand the way the characters moved. If you give me a painting, I couldn't interpret the painting the way I drew. But a comic book, there were lines around the characters. So that's how I got into it all.
So, when did you discover DC and Marvel?
Probably, I discovered DC probably in the late 60s when people were giving me comics. I had a few. I remember a Green Lantern, a Flash. Then about 1970, we went away to a local holiday resort, Morecambe. And on the pier, there was a newsstand. And they had, I think, Marvel's Greatest Comics 24 and Fear #3. Oh, I had my holiday money went on them. It was a great because they've got good, thick 68-page reads, which are fantastic when you're a kid. And the Fear #3 is the one that got to me. Strangely, not the Fantastic Four, but seeing particularly Steve Ditko's artwork in
Oh,
that thing.
he is amazing. A lot of people
Yeah,
just don't give him credit. They just look at Amazing Spider-Man and think
yeah,
that's all he did. It's funny, you're talking about 64-page comics. And when I started in the Bronze Age, most of the US comics were like 17, 18 pages. And then it
yeah.
came out with some new formats. It was a dollar comic, which is 80 pages of comic books. And then
Oh, gosh.
they had this
Yeah,
giant size, which is like 34 page. And then a kid like 10, 11, you're like, oh, I'm in comic book heaven. Look at this. I've got like a 80-page book. This will take me forever to read.
yeah.
But when did you start? What age did, because you're a big horror fan, obviously. What age did you start getting into horror comic books?
Oracle really came on when I was about 12, I think. So during the summer of 1974, I got a couple of the DC Unexpected, the 100 pages, the big ones.
Oh, yeah, I know
And
what you're
they,
talking about.
and as a 12-year-old, they were okay. Now I love them an awful lot more. I can see them for what they are. I thought they were okay, but what happened in the summer, it was like a very, very hot summer. I'd gone out one afternoon to do an errand for my mum. Coming past the newsagents, there's a copy of Skywald's Nightmare 17 with this very scantily clad lady in front of this vampire-like gorilla creature with a horn on its head. And it's the vampire-like creature I latched onto, not the woman. It was the
Right.
monster I wanted. So I convinced my mum this would be a good thing for me to have. She said, all right, and you pick it up. And I loved it. I fell in love with this comic. That was the moment I think I got into horror comics, was reading that. And also about that same time, a British comedian, comic book collector by the name of Bob Monkhouse, who was very big over here, big collector as well. He did an afternoon slot one afternoon on one of these ladies' afternoon shows when they're supposed to finish the housework. They could put their feet up and watch one of these programs. And he did something on pre-code horror comics. Also, a 12-year-old kid,
And a
he's got
light
all these.
bulb went off.
And I just thought, I've got to get some of these. Of course, when you're 12 years old, living in my town, Rochdale, you weren't going to get a hold of a 1950s horror
No.
comic. It was not going to happen. I had to wait a good few years for that. But it was, I think, those things, the unexpected, the nightmare, Tales of the Zombie I got later on that summer, and Bob Monkhouse's chat on that afternoon show, that set me off with horror comics. Yeah, it did.
Peter, I feel better when you said 11 or 12, because if you were saying like, oh, I was about 8 years old when I got my first pre, I'm like, oh, Norman. So you were mentioning Skywall. Skywall, that people don't know, was a short run magazine that did a lot of black and white, really cool, hard to
Yes.
get. Did you also, were you able to get the Warren magazines while you were in England? Did they have them there?
No, I didn't get my first Warren magazine. I didn't get until I was 16. It was a second-hand copy of Creepy Number Three, big, thick tape on the spine. I've still got it now and I still love it. And that's my first Warren comic. But my newsagents did DC and I got the occasional Skyward. The newsagents at the top of the hill had Marvel. And I never saw Warren. We never saw any of Jim Warren's magazines where I live.
Oh, that's too.
I think if you lived in London or Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Birmingham, maybe Glasgow, the big cities, you might have seen them, but we didn't.
You are currently the editor of Cryptology, but you started publishing way back in 2008 because I did my research, and you put out this mammoth book of horror comics.
Yes.
What led you to release it? And had you ever thought about putting out again like a digital format or doing another volume?
I don't know if it's a digital format. I can't remember if they did one.
Not digital.
Yeah, they never said anything to me about the digital format. I don't think there's any plans to do another one. I think they did a second print of it about 2010, 11. They did a second print of the book. But when it came on, I was doing my own amateur fanzine from the
Right.
tomb. I started that in about 2000. And I've been doing it for about 6 years. And I thought, a chap called Peter Duncan came on and asked me, did I fancy doing a book? And I was blown away. Somebody like me doing a full book. And they said, we just wanted to collect comic strips from right from the beginning up until the present time. There were certain, they said to me, don't go asking Marvel Comics or DC Comics, we can't afford them. DC were out of our range as well. So I put together with loads and loads of other great material because as much as I love Atlas Comics and DC 70s comics and of course EC, I still put together, I think, an absolutely fantastic book. It was like being a kid. And I did pitch it at me as I was that 12, 13-year-old, just getting into all these horror comics. It had that sort of feel to it. That's all. You're getting people excited about what was going on back then. And we found it all the way back from in the 1940s through up until, I don't know, about 2005. And people really did pitch in, help out. I was quite amazed to be working with people like Mike Kaluta and Mike Plew.
Very cool.
Somebody like me, who basically was running the fanzine and was just a fan. It was brilliant. It was, yeah, kid's dream.
Maybe they'll put it out in the digital edition because it's not in digital edition. I think it's out of
Right.
print, and it would be
Yeah.
nice to have it in a digital edition. But you did say you did that fanzine from the tomb.
Yeah.
How did you go about deciding I'm going to do a fanzine, and what were you hoping to accomplish when you did it for all that time?
Yeah, from the team I'd been developing, I'd always been making my own little comics and comic related magazines since I was about 8 years old, hand drawn, one copy. Started getting into fanzines when I was about 15. I got my first one in the January 1977, Comics Unlimited 42. And that opened in a tiny world. So there was lots of people like me. And I always wanted that from that moment on. I wanted my own fan publication. That wasn't good enough. But to have something like that to express my views and other people exchange their views was what I'd hoped for as a 15-year-old. And I think it was in 1991 I got can you remember Ernie Gerber's photo journal guide to comic books?
Yes,
There's two
yes.
big volumes.
Yeah, I
I
remember.
went through all those covers and I thought, I've got to put all this together, learn the history of them. And so using the comic collection I was building up, I started to get more 1950s horror comics in the early 1990s because they were affordable then over here. Using the Gerber guides, the price guide, I had Mike Benson's book on horror comics he published in about 1991. I started to put my own ideas together along with reading Squadron and Spaffon. And initially, From the Tomb was going to be an EC homage, tribute to EC. But then I started to realise There's a lot more going on in the 1950s, just more than EC. Atlas were producing some fantastic stuff. I got a liking for both Harvey and Fawcett horror. So I expanded it. And when I'm in 1998, I ordered a copy of that sense of enthusiasm and fun. So I dropped him a line. I said how much I'd enjoyed it and how much it took me back. So he said, do you fancy writing for me, doing a few articles? I like what you're saying. So I started to do a few things on pre-code horror comics. And then we related the horror comics to Lovecraft. I got a taste then. I expanded my ideas to cover comics, horror comics, right from the beginning through to the present dates. It was 5 A4 sheets folded in half to make 20 A5 pages.
Yeah.
Put it out. I put it out to friends. A friend of mine who was a comic book dealer, Ken Harmon, sadly not with us anymore. He took a bundle just to give out and give to people his London shows when he was selling comics, saying, "Oh, this is what this guy is doing. He's really into it. We're trying to get people interested." And Ken said to me at the time, he said, "Pete says from small acorns," and never was a true word spoken because it just grew and grew. The first 8 issues of From the Tomb came out on, I printed at home. I got a big A3 Hewlett Packard printer, which is beautiful. My boss turned a blind eye to my antics at work and let me print the black and white sections.
Oh, that's cool.
He's a good man, and we're still friends now. I always worked extra hours to cover for all this, but we were such a good team, a great set of people. So he turned a blind eye to me antics. He quite liked what I was doing. And but it grew out of control. Bud Plant came in to help. He was distributing stuff in the States. And then it just got out of control. And a fellow by the name of John Anderson, who had a company called Soaring Penguin, who was looking after small press people, he found out about my plight, that I just couldn't keep printing all these and keep writing it. So he took the printing side and the publishing side off me, let me do the creative end. And he got me into Diamond, and we got into the States, and we got into Canada. And I got readers in Germany, Holland, Norway, Belgium, Sweden, France. It was just amazing. A really good set of people who were really enthusiastic. And that's how From the Tomb came about, which led to me doing the Mammoth Book of Horror Comics.
How did you originally come into contact with Tomorrow's Publishing? Was it around 2010?
It was through Roy Thomas. Roy got in touch with me about the 6th or 7th issue at the same time as a fellow over here by the name of Pete Crowther, who owned a company called PS Publishing. They didn't know who I was because Pete had said. So they were discussing as to who I actually was, because Pete said to us, "Is he one of yours?" And we said, "No, he thought he was one of yours." He said, "No, we don't know him." So Roy got in touch with me. I sent him a bundle across, and a friendship started. For all his stature, we all look up to him. He was quite an ordinary chap, but Roy was always honest with me. Horror comics weren't his thing, but he did what I was doing and the enthusiasm. I suppose it took it back to his time when he started in fan publications. Excuse me. And I think Roy got John interested in what I was doing, John Morrow, and he was always wanting us to do something together. But at the time, I was too heavily involved with doing From the Tomb. I had a full-time job as well. So the time was never right for us to all get involved. I was buying Tomorrow's publications, buying Roy's magazine and some of the books that John was putting out. So I inclined as to what was going on. But it really started through Roy. And it was only when John stepped in at that point and said to me, "Do you fancy doing the best of From the Tomb?" So we started off.
Very cool. I would have never thought that you would connect to Roy Thomas to Tomorrow's at all.
No.
So you had 2 volumes out, Best of the Tomb, but Crept from the Tomb, and then 2024, It Rose from the Tomb came out. So the first one must have been successful enough to do 2 more.
Yeah, I was really chuffed with the way the first one came out, because John just gave me, if he said, pick the best of everything you want from the best articles. And I said, we've got stuff from the unpublished issue 29, which is very good. Can we run it? Because that'll be something new for readers who've got everything. So we put all that in. I redesigned and rewrote a lot of stuff because I wanted it all to be fresh and new. And I had come on a long way at that point from where I was, say, 2003, 2004. So I redid it all, and I was really pleased with the look at Buttons. And John was really complimentary. He really did support me. The book was starting to sell out. And about the March of 2016, it was really odd. In the February, the rubber stamped my departure from work. I was retiring in the September. A matter of weeks later, out of the blue, John comes on and said, "Do you fancy doing another book for us?" And I said, "Perfect, because I'm retiring and I can write this book." I struggled actually because I didn't settle to retirement the way I thought I was going to do. I was all over the place, sit down and write this book. But John was really understanding, as he always is. And I got it done. And it went down well. Roy liked it. Roy Thomas took me on to write articles for Alter Egos on the back of that one. And John B. Cook asked me to do one or two things for him, the projects they were working on for Two Morals. So it worked out well, and it led in the end to the new book, because once I'd finished It Crept from the Tomb, I felt there's more I wanted to say. I hadn't got as far as I'd wanted with it. So I started to build up my own ideas, and I was really looking to bring back From the Tomb. But the idea at that point was to use the Amazon platform of publishing. So it wouldn't cost me anything, because I wasn't in a position where I could spend lots of money on these things, having just retired. So I was building up, but I had a good relationship with John. So I thought I'd pitch these I had 4 100-page issues ready with all the articles in. John said, I was expecting him to knock me back, be very polite about it, as he always is. And I said, "What do you think?" And John snapped my hand off. He said, "Yeah, we'd love to do something with you." So he offered me a new book. And then we started to discuss cryptology as well.
So for newer and older fans, why should they get your 2 anthologies? What would they get out of it?
There's an awful lot of enthusiasm there. No matter who's writing for us, there's always do it with a joy. I like to think of From the Tomb, as much as it's about the dark side of comics, it is a celebration. It's a great sense of fun. And we got some good interviews there from professionals who were there back in the 1950s, who tell you what it was like working at the time and the fun they were having, but also the concerns, because there was the crusade against comics.
Yeah.
So it is, I actually think it's been very informative, and we've got a very good set of writers on there. We've got people like Barry Forshaw, who's written book after book over here. He's quite a celebrity on this side. Pete Crowder pitched in as well. We had we had Pete Von Scholly doing covers after he was working in Hollywood at the time on certain films, and he'd be helping out. Yeah, it's a very positive, uplifting magazine about the dark side of comics.
So how did you come up with the name for Cryptology? And how do you figure out what you want in each issue? Because it's a very eclectic mix.
I think John Morrow had the idea for Cryptology for some time. And when I pitched all my ideas for reviving From the Tomb, a lot of them fitted in with what he had in mind for Cryptology. So the idea, when he said, "Yeah, we'll do the book with you. Do you fancy doing the magazine?" It was, at first I was assisting him.
Okay.
So I thought, God, it's a big step up to work for a professional company. I was used to working in my own amateur way on From the Tomb and having a free run doing the books with John. To work for a magazine, I thought, I'll give it a go. I've got nothing to lose. John introduced me to the team he'd selected. I was quite honest with them. I said, "I'm a fan editor and a fan writer. I'm not a professional like you. I'll listen to what you've got to say." And it just seemed to grow. I can remember Michael Cronenberg, our designer, he said, "Yes, looks like you've got a good team there." He says, "Is there room for our Steve?" And he told me what his brother Steve had done. And he had quite a background. I said, "Of course there's room for Steve." And it's just grown like that. People knowing one another, the enthusiasm that people share. And we've got a team of about 20 writers. It was always, John Morrow wanted something from all the different media around horror, whether it's the films, television, straight to video films, comic books, pulps, graphic novels, paperbacks we love, all the gory covers on paperbacks. And we wanted to look at toys and models. Bubblegum cards are going to be seen in radio broadcasts. We wanted to cover the lot and just give people a flavour for what was going on, because it is about retro vintage horror. We do little bits on modern stuff where there's a tip from the past and it's flown into recent years. It does work well. The blend does work well. I mean, I think issue 3, we've got virtually every form of horror, where it's comic books, radio broadcast, artwork, paperbacks. It's all in that issue. We managed to get every single kind of horror you could get it.
So how's the fan reception been towards the magazine since it's been launched?
We've had a very good reception. I was completely surprised. One of my concerns was, I'm from England, coming in to edit what is essentially an American publication. And one chap actually did say to me, he was quite honest, he said, Pete said, you do read like a British magazine trying to be American. And that was my biggest fear. He got back to me with the second issue and told me, he said, you've got it right. The reception has been quite amazing. It's been very positive. Observations have always been positive to make it a better magazine, to get me to look at things. But we've been quite astonished the way people reacted to it. Because very quickly, really, we started off, we were quarterly, but after the first issue, John Morrow had a word with myself and Michael Cronenberg, our designer. How do we feel about going bi-monthly? And we both felt it was good for the profile of the magazine. It was going to increase our workload. But on this other side of things, there was a lot of articles coming in that really I wanted to get out there. And a quarterly schedule was going to delay things, and that wasn't going to help us. It's all been very positive in really a short space of time.
So do you have anything special planned?
You'll be seeing when issue 3 comes out. That'll be out in, I think, beginning of June. You're going to be seeing Mars Attacks in there. You're going to see, we've got, shall we say, evil puppets in there, that kind of thing. Issue 4, we've got 3D films and 3D comics. We just finished issue 5, the Skull and Bones issue, which is anything where it's in the pulps, films, model kits, skull related. We've got some very good articles in there. We managed to squeeze everything in. There was so much of it. We're just starting to work on that right now. We've got zombies taking over. So we've got Bernie Wrightson zombies in there. We've got the zombie apocalypse from cinema. We've got a very good article on the Night of the Living Dead that quite astonished me. We've got like, and then in issue 7, we've got an issue on vampires, a quite stunning cover that Michael put together. That blew us all away. Issue 8, we've got a Psycho theme going on with an interview with Tom Holland, who wrote Psycho 2 and also did Chucky. And so we've got a bit of that going on in there as well. And then we've got, in issue 9, we've got spider creatures coming up. Cool. Neil Adams in 10. So we're planning to about issue 19 at the moment coming in. I thought I would struggle editing this magazine, but it's been anything but, because so many ideas have come in and you can start to formulate people's ideas into certain issues. So we get a bit of a theme running on through it. And it's just coming together so incredibly well, mainly because we've got a great team of creative writers.
Peter, I'm going to pause this for quite a second. I want to do is wrap this segment up, send you another Zoom link, and then do the second half of the horror stuff and do it as part of the history podcast. Are you open to that?
Yes, I will. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, let me end this thing. I'm going to end this and give me about 10 minutes and I'll get a new Zoom link for you. One that we would feature cryptology and one you talking about horror comics. And I went through my notes and I'm going, oh, we got enough here. So let's wrap this up. Give me about 10 minutes and I'll send you another link and we'll do the rest of it. Okay?
Okay, yeah.
All right. Peter Normanton, editor of Cryptology. This has been a ghoulishly fantastic taping. Thank you so much for joining me. Do you have any final words before we end?
I say thank you very much for inviting me onto this. It was a second time I've ever done anything like this, and it's been really entertaining.
Having you on.
Bye-bye.
All right. I'll call you. I'll get you done in about 10 minutes.